Bienvenidos y buenas tardes. Welcome and good afternoon. A Mexican teenage boy stands in the middle of a grapevine row, tying the vine and twine the best he can. His hands are numb from the cold and moving too slowly. The sun, just starting to rise, peeks across the canopy of grapevines above his head. He pauses and thinks of his beautiful wife, all of 17, he left back in their tiny apartment. How will he support her, being 17 only himself, as a high school dropout? How will they make ends meet? What kind of future lies before them? Halfway through the row, he makes a mistake in tying, and the vine slaps him across the cheek. The sting is not only physical, but emotional. My wife deserves better, he thought to himself. I deserve better. I quit, he says out loud as he walks and leaves the row unfinished. In contrast to this young man I just described in the fields, take a look at me. What do you see? A well-dressed, well-educated, professional Latino male, not to mention good-looking. If you look closer, you'll see who I really am. I am that 17-year-old boy, a child of poverty, desperate for a way out, standing in the middle of a grapevine row with a slash across my face, making the biggest decision of my life. By the time I was in the 3rd grade, I had moved 20 times through 10 different states. I've seen New York, Wyoming, Illinois, Indiana, California, Texas, just to name a few. The family theme song was Willie Nelson's "On the Road Again." So after many miles, months, and states, my family and I finally settled in Salinas, California, permanently. I thought it would be great not having to move again. I could actually make friends and keep them. We wouldn't have to keep the cardboard boxes in the house just in case we needed to move again, or live out of our car waiting for another family to move out of the farm labor housing. I could finally finish the 3rd grade. During the next 8 years, I wore many labels: migrant, English language learner, and head of my household. In both my freshman and sophomore year, I had gained another label: high school dropout. Both years, I had to assume the responsibility of being the daycare provider for my 2 younger sisters, ensure that my brothers didn't get into trouble, then go to work to help with the rent and utilities. My sophomore year was the hardest because my mom became very ill, which only added to my load. When I did attend school, my classrooms were not the most accepting environments. Yes, I was one of those kids that you as teachers might have labeled as far below basic, a difficult disciplinary problem, and lackadaisical when it came to academics. At times I was scolded for making too much noise for tapping my pencil, or yelled at for asking a clarifying question of my neighbor, or accused of being on drugs because I fell asleep in class. Needless to say, my educational experience was mundane, mediocre, and lacked rigor and expectation. I didn't realize it consciously, but later I could see that here was when the seed was planted in my mind that school should be much more than what I experienced. Then, during the spring of my junior year, something happened. I fell in L-O-V-E. That's right, I fell in love. And many of you already know that love can make you do some crazy things. So crazy that I got married. And no, we didn't get married because we were expecting a baby. Our son Andrew came much later. We couldn't be apart, but there was no room for one more person in the tiny one-bedroom apartment that I lived in with my mom and 4 younger siblings. So I needed to drop out again to support myself and my wife. It was hard for a 17-year-old to get a job, and so I had to go back to the fields to support us. I'd never worked the grapevines before, and let me tell you, after that vine slapping me, I vowed I never would again. The very next day, I made an appointment with the counselor at Furman High School to go back to school and get my high school diploma. The seed in my mind from my miserable years in school bloomed. I decided to become a teacher. I knew that I can change both my life and my students' lives in ways that others might not understand. Ruby Payne, in her book, A Framework for Understanding Poverty, lists 4 reasons why an individual leaves their poverty-stricken home. 1, the situation they're in is so painful that anything would be better. 2, a specific talent or ability provides a unique opportunity. 3, they have a goal or vision to be something or more. And 4, someone sponsors them. A mentor, a teacher, shows them that it is possible to live differently. I didn't have someone to help me along the way, but I did have the determination, goals, and visions to become successful. In the midst of our college years, my wife and I worked at different shifts so that we can have time with our son at all times. We also went to college in shifts. She went to school during the day, and I at night. Was it easy? No. But it was the pact that we made for a better life and future. As a side note, my wife and I will celebrate our 21st wedding anniversary this October. Thank you. Now, fast forward to the middle of my first year of teaching, right before a staff meeting, my vice principal tells me, "I'd like you to become part of the AVID program," which was to be the topic of that day's staff meeting. While I was sitting in the library with my other colleagues, waiting for the AVID Cornell Note presentation to begin, my mind was racing with the next day's lesson. Just then, the presenter started talking about WIC, W-I-C. And then came the question, does anyone know what WIC stands for? Of course, this was before the R was added to the end of the acronym. I immediately thought, wow, it's great that my school wants the teachers to be aware of the resources the county provides to low-income women and their infants. But what does that have to do with Cornell Notes? Let me tell you, I'm glad I didn't raise my hand. I learned that WIC not only stands for Women, Infant, and Children, but serves as the core of the AVID classroom. Writing, inquiry, collaboration, reading, and rigor. WICR, W-I-C-R. This is when I had my epiphany to teaching, helping students, and learning. Since that first day, I have seen many students come through my door who, like me, had the desire of a better education, a better life, but didn't know how to achieve those dreams. Along the way, I learned new strategies, methods of teaching, and a plethora of teaching techniques for myself as well as my students. Aside from learning about teaching styles and differentiation and best practices within the classroom, AVID is about advancement via individual determination. It's about being a family, connecting with students regardless of where they come from or the labels they've been burdened with, and guiding them with tough love throughout their academic careers. Case in point, 1 year or 2 years ago, one night, I got a frantic phone call from one of my previous AVID students who was in her sophomore year at Fresno State. Lopez, I didn't get into my English class. Do you know it's 3 in the morning? I tell her. But Lopez, you don't understand. Not at 3 in the morning, I don't. But that's how AVID often manifests itself. In the relationship between students and their teachers, students to each other, the family that will be there to answer the phone in the wee hours of the morning. So as you embark on your work here this week, I'd like to ask you to reflect on the following questions. Will you be that mentor, the sponsor, or that advocate for your students? Who do you see when you look at your students in your classroom? Do you see the Mexican boy from a poor home, a gang member, a pregnant girl, or one of those kids? Or can you envision someone like me, or you, as a successful college graduate trying to bring about change for all students with AVID? Booker T. Washington once said, "I have learned that success is to be measured not by the position that one has reached, as by the obstacles by which one has overcome to become successful." How will you help someone like I was, a scared but hopeful boy, overcome their obstacles with your work in AVID? Have a great week, and thank you.